Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the studio. And I'm Doug Drinkwater. I'm the editorial and strategy director here at Hot Topics. I think what we're ultimately going to talk about, though, is as technology becomes more pervasive across society, across business, even through to line of business departments and us as everyday consumers, what does that mean for those those data, and those technology leaders who are charged with kind of getting their arms around those technology estates, but have also seen their influence and their responsibilities grow quite significantly over the last 5 years, often beyond the typical confines of what an IT leader looks like. I want to start, first of all, in terms of how perceptions of technology leaders have changed in your times in industry. Karl, how would you describe yourself as a leader today, and how might that be different to perhaps 5 or 10 years ago?
So I think what has changed is that kind of perception internally, I think, about the back office just being there as an order taker running the internal tech to being much more an integral part of the business. And I think that's kind of shifted over my career, although started off in web development and that kind of stuff. So didn't really lead much other than stuff that broke regularly back in the 90s. But apart from that, it's all been about now is much more about how are we adding value to the organization, and where are we at in terms of having those conversations? Because unless you're not having the conversations, you can't add any value. So I think that's been the kind of biggest shift, and I kind of characterize it in those two big areas. It's moved from order taker to somebody who's got a seat at the table to actually influence business outcome.
Alex, what about you?
So I've seen it change an awful lot, actually. To be honest, I don't think I'd be sitting here doing this job now if it hadn't been for the massive changes in technology. Some of you know me from a previous life when I was a CMO and a brand marketer. I didn't come up through the normal ranks, but I have, customer at my heart, if you like. And the reason that these kind of opportunities have opened up for people like me is because we don't have to worry about what's going on under the hood anymore. That's kind of sorted, and so we really come into our own, I think, thinking now about kind of how people are interacting with technology. So yeah, it's massively changed and really opened up this as a career for all sorts of people who wouldn't necessarily have thought about it before.
I do want to come on later to those different types of careers and different skill sets. I think Karl might disagree. I think he had an email about the Wi-Fi dropping in the office before coming online. So different perspective, perhaps. Yeah. Ian, what about yourself, sir?
I think it's interesting how little technology you can do as a technology leader, unless you actually go and overtly carve the time out to be a technology leader. I am, at any given time, marriage guidance counsellor, UN peacekeeper, physical and mental consultant, very often used car salesman, and that would probably take up most of my day. So I actually overtly try and put technology back into what I do. But I think it's interesting because there has been this change, and we went through an era of you had to speak the language of the business, whatever that is. I've always been in a business. I didn't know it had a different language. You had to present yourself in a different way. And actually now it's great to be a geek. Actually, tech, if you can tell the story well, tech at the boardroom is amazing.
Love that. The other one I'll add into that, I was like hostage negotiator. I heard an analyst firm say that once as well.
Yes.
But Ilona, what about yourself?
I have two perspectives on that. One is kind of how I have grown as a tech leader, and number two is where I see us collectively as industry, as organizations. I come from command and control. I was doing SAP implementation, so don't talk to me about user experience and whatever. Yeah, to actually someone brought up the term of orchestra conductor, and I think that's where we're at now, more influencing and doing kind of that leadership, broader leadership. Where I see organizations is kind of that command and control was pretty much the culture back kind of early 2000. I'm still staggered that so many organizations seem to be stuck there. Where IT, you say back office, there's so many where IT is still the back office, and where it almost doesn't matter. And I walked out of a couple of organizations to say whatever the big brand was, to say, it's just there's a disconnect between kind of where between the maturity level, between the willingness and readiness of the organization to embark on a journey where technology is more than kind of your mouse and computer.
Just expanding on that, how much of that do you think is the maturity at the kind of C-suite level? How much of it is the culture? And how much of it is actually, as a leader, you need to reinvent yourself? I mean, I think on your LinkedIn, for example, you describe yourself as a psychologist turned ERP expert, turned process engineer turned CIO. So you've obviously had to evolve your own skill set and how you're positioned internally and externally within the organisation.
I think Ian said we're business leaders. Yeah. So it's I think the most valuable skill for me as a CIO was listening, which is a bit difficult when you're at the start of your career. You're ambitious. So yeah, and that increasing understanding of the complexity. And I think the title is Technology is Ubiquitous. Yes, and we moved from shadow IT to business-led IT. Then we look at is it IT, it's now shadow AI or business-led AI, etc. So you have to adapt, and I think we're all getting all the wiser and a bit more chilled. Yeah, so not everything is just as important and urgent.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about the title as well. Any questions at this point? Don't let me. Yeah, Sam, if we can get a microphone to Sam at the front.
I'm a film buff. I like lots of movies, and I notice in all the futuristic movies I've ever seen how wrong they've got it. Terminator 2020, I mean, we're in 24, we haven't got any of that. What I'm interested in, and I know we're looking at, what it means for digital leaders, all this ubiquitousness, and really what I'm interested in from yourselves is, what is it not that you think we're getting right for the future? What is it that you think we're getting wrong right now? That's
trying to standardize
in terms of ubiquitous
the eternal attempt to standardize. Yeah, it just no longer works, and we're still putting energy into doing it. The tension with we want to simplify things for the users as well. So it there's great intentions behind it, but that's what we're often getting wrong in my view.
I think one of the things that we consistently get wrong is. And it's not necessarily getting it wrong. It's just a lack of awareness. There is situation and context to everything we do as leaders, and very often, and it kind of comes to this: we will standardize. It's dogma where an understanding of situation and context is really, really important. In terms of ubiquitous technologies, the leadership team you work with, your colleagues, now understand technology. They understand it enough. They don't understand the depths of it, but they understand it enough. So they will ask questions. If you are still sitting in this framework, this process, these standards, you're missing a shift in behavior of the people that you work alongside. And now more than ever, with AI and the pace of change and everything that's going on, the breadth at which there is a knowledge and understanding and acceptance of technology is wider than it's ever been. The depth is still not there. And that's where we have to come in and fill the gap.
Does that make it a bit dangerous in a way? There's an expression, isn't there, about almost being armed with enough information to be dangerous? Does that make it a bit tricky for your roles in terms of actually explaining realities?
Possibly, but I think that's the wrong sentiment to come in. Apologies, Doug, but I don't expect my CEO to understand the depth of AI. I expect him to be super excited about what it can do, how it can change the business, how it can improve productivity, how it can create new routes to market in my industry, in healthcare, how it can transform patient and clinician experience. I don't expect him to understand ontology and taxonomy and what data structure goes with what. I'm not interested, and he shouldn't. But if he's excited about it, I'm excited about it, and that's what we as leaders tap into.
Yeah, and that's the relationship building part of the role, right? That's the getting away from the disconnect between back office and front office, or whatever you want to term it. So that's fine. They're going to come up with loads of ideas, and we will get on to the shadow IT stuff. But that exists probably because of the stuff that you just kind of mentioned and talked about. Computer says no, Therefore, we're going to find another way of doing it. We've all been there many times where we said, well, we can't do that because it's not on our release schedule and blah, 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 whatever else. And then you find out that they've already done it somewhere else and probably bought it on a company credit card or whatever. And then you're into the recovery of, well, have you done the DPIA, GDPR, blah, blah. There's always like 1,000,001 reasons why it's really difficult to do it. But what I keep telling my team is let's focus on the one why we should do it and then just keep pushing at that.
Makes sense.
Stop throwing barriers up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think the thing we get wrong is that we try to shut things down. It's our natural inclination. I think we go, no, I mean, this is AI. It's kind of like this is the Wild West, isn't it? Everybody's going to go and start putting lots of personal data up there and building big, large language models, and don't even think about trying to shut it. You won't. So I think our focus really needs to be on innovation and actually really putting your back behind the grassroots innovation that is coming up, but whilst working on behaviour change. So really just giving people some really basic guardrails around, what it means to be handling that kind of data.
Yeah.
Maybe can I add what I find myself keep doing wrong at a personal level is I learned success equals quality times acceptance. And I think throughout my career, even now, I find myself, rolling the sleeves up and getting the quality right, lifting the quality, and leaving that acceptance on the side, and call it self-advocacy. Call it you're advocating for the function, etc. So that kind of, to me, it usually was politics, and I hate politics. So is how do we reframe as technologists, maybe it's just not myself, maybe some resonates with somebody else in the room, but how do we focus on acceptance and that taking it into broad organizations to get a seat at the table, appreciation, and people.
100%. And this notion that in the past we ran projects, we delivered projects, they had an outcome, and then we moved on to the next one. That is, I'm not saying we don't do that anymore, but that is not the majority of what we do. Now we have to think about adoption. We have to think about how technology iterates on an ongoing basis. It was a decade ago we worried about iterative and agile in a development sense. We now have to think about iterative in a day-to-day running my business sense. Again, I'll keep harping back onto AI because it's what I'm in at the moment. But the idea that you implement some AI and then you just go and leave it with your business colleagues is nonsense. You're writing prompts. You're continually iterating. It's not a large language model that learns. It's you that learn inside your business.
I do want to come on in a few moments to job roles. We had an interesting conversation on that side, shadow IT or business-led IT, depending on how you view that. But I think Brian at the back from Channel 4 had a question. We can get a mic to him.
Comment earlier about it's a great time to be a geek and talking tech to the board, which is great. Now, I work in cyber security or information security. And the problem that we have at the moment is that we are still going through that transition where it is you have to talk the business speak in order to get them to understand. I have to understand how the finance department works, how the HR department works, how the commissioning team works, how the technology teams work, and I effectively have to spend an awful lot of my time converting all of my speaking to crayon so that they're going to be able to understand. This makes it very, very difficult, and my opinion, obviously because I'm sort of immersed in this, is that cybersecurity is more important than ever now, particularly with technology and the number of companies that are focusing purely on it. What needs to change in order for the board to get behind that, to realise that they need to understand at least the very basics of cybersecurity so that we can then actually get on and do the business of protecting the company and enabling it to work in a safe environment rather than spending most of my time trying to convert it into Teletubby speak.
Now, as a CISO, you're now exactly where we were as CIOs some years back. Zero trust now and cybersecurity now is what digital transformation was before. So it's learning a different language, talk in the risk appetite and just having those different conversations, engaging with, marketing. Such a tension, because what Alex said, the moment you set a standard, they went off and bought 3 tools, so two of them you've never heard of. But picking the brains of marketing, looking at how do we connect with procurement? How do you connect across the organization and make it everyone's job, everyone's success in a way?
I remember during the pandemic, I was working in a big university, and as a lot of you will know, threats just escalated massively, and there were quite a few ransomware attacks. I'm glad to say that we weren't one of them. And the reason I think we weren't one of them was because what changed was that dialogue with the business, in this case, academics. Now, I was in a heavily sort of STEM university. I'm working with a lot of very eminent computer scientists and AI academics who were just at the bleeding edge and using a whole load of tools that I didn't even know about. And I used to say it's a little bit like they wanted it to be Sweden and I needed it to be North Korea with everything shut down. I had come from government where everything was completely shut down, and I had a whole load of academics taking, USB things out of backs of computers. But that was all about making that connection to the business. In this case, our IP. I was like, do you really want to put your life's work at danger just because you can't be bothered to do this really small thing that we need you to do? So yeah, behavior change.
There is something in the storytelling of that and going through and using examples. So I've been unlucky in my outside work to help a group of 54 schools with a ransomware attack that they had. That was brilliant for me as a kind of outsider and a non-exec to kind of be part of that, because there's stuff you pick up that you would never think about in any disaster recovery plan. So then being able to take that back into my environment and say, actually, there's all the usual stuff we have thought about, and then there's all these other things that we haven't. And really being clear on the disconnect or the kind of connection between technical recovery and then business recovery, which, I mean, how many kind of disaster recovery planning scenarios have we had where it's always Microsoft have been taken out and we can no longer work with 365? And it's like, well, okay, but what about all the other things that you can't do, can do? How do you pay people? How do you get access to the building if all that lot's been taken out? There's all the wider things. So being able to use those stories, I think, has helped bring to reality some of that kind of stuff that feels a little bit intangible for boards, because they kind of hear about it happening, but they've never really experienced it. They don't know that actually you probably can't recover inside 24 hours, 48. What happens 3 months later when you're still not recovered? All of that kind of stuff is just part of that journey you mentioned. You kind of where we are a while back. It's just bringing that stuff to life and kind of.
Which is why it was so brilliant to hear the British Library telling their story about what happened to them, because that was the first time you've really seen that being shared.
Also, that level of detail, I think, that went into.
I think that and I love the analogy that you have to you write your own team in pen, and when you go to the board, you have to write in crayon. But the storytelling part of it, I think, is really, really important. Stories bring situations to life. If you've been the wrong side of any kind of cyber incident, and I'm sure you know them as well as anybody, it's not the detail of the technology impact of that attack or that breach. It's all about the impact it has on the people, on your customers, on the organization, on the environment. So the storytelling around that side is really, really powerful. And I think also sometimes as technologists, we sit here and go, well, I had to color it in crayon because they don't understand me. I am the worst person to put next to a CFO. I genuinely am the worst person. I can do it that deep and that wide. And my CFO colors in for me. So if I have to color in for him for cyber, that's kind of okay. That's the quid pro quo.
I do want to come on to a question, but can I just say some unbelievable analogies being used here about Teletubbies, crayons, Sweden, North Korea. I didn't expect that to start this chat, but there we go. I've got a question at the gentleman at the back.
Good morning, panel. So little bit of crystal ball gazing. So, are we at a blockbuster video moment now? What happened to them? So thinking about engineers, all the engineers that we have, they're ubiquitous at the moment, aren't they? So what's going to happen to them over the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Great question.
That's a question.
Ian, I'm going to come to you. I think you'll have an answer for that.
That's just I looked at note to self, don't look at him when there's a difficult question. Is it a blockbuster moment? No. I'm going to say situation and awareness again. Blockbuster were the least situationally and contextually aware company on the planet at the time. They were arrogant, and what then subsequently happened to them was almost inevitable with the benefit of hindsight. I think your question is around AI and coding itself, and those are incredible tools. They will elevate and shift the routine and mundane tasks that people used to do into activities that support higher order systems. I can only see that as not a good thing, but an incredible thing and a great thing. Will it change the dynamic, and will people lose their jobs? Yes, inevitably. But geez, that happened when we invented the spinning jenny, and the Luddites came in and wanted to try and every turn of technology and the way it influences society and people has had that kind of impact. What we need to do is work out how to move people through those higher order systems, get them more productive, get the things that were routine up at a higher quality, and technology does that. We've got a little pilot going on inside one of our divisions that is rewriting code. It's doing its own user acceptance testing. It's using a separate AI to mark another AI's work, which is just blows my mind. But that came into our business because smart technical coders wanted to use this new technology. So I don't think it's a blockbuster moment, but I do think it's a moment where we have to understand and recognize where we move through. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
I do want to move on in the interest of time. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. Job titles. I want to come to you on this, Karl, and then maybe Alex. I mean, it's funny kind of covering this space as a journalist, because you've got chief information officers, chief digital, now it's chief digital and information, chief digital and technology, chief product and technology. The quote I mentioned at the start, for those that missed it, was, and I won't, one of the chaps on the panel, so I'll narrow it down slightly, where do we stop with this shit? I think it was in relation to chief AI officers. Are we going to have chief free officers? Are we going to have chief blockchain officers? So Karl, not to be on the spot, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that was my quote. Funnily enough, I just received a text message before coming on stage on some recruitment I'm helping with outside, and it's like the candidate wants the job title to be changed. It's like, well, change it then. I mean, the title and the substance is what is important for me, right? I don't really care what my title is. Am I really clear on what I'm there to do and achieve? And we've all had job descriptions which 3 months after joining, you're thinking, well, that's whatever. Just go with it. I don't think it necessarily, it doesn't matter to me, right? I'm just, what am I there to do? Am I getting the outcomes delivered?
Yeah. Can it matter for the organisation, though, in terms of elevating the messaging, the positioning? Because even like, look at government, for example, did that a few months ago, and I think it's now government digital and data. They've kind of rebranded how that whole industry is kind of seen in a way. So I guess there's external perceptions that can change by simple phrasing.
Yeah, I think potentially there is, but then there are also the job titles for me have normally been defined by a board that isn't really clear on what it actually wants, and probably getting some advice from externally. And it's kind of like, well, CTO, CIO, blah, blah, blah. And then they all change and they end up
I'm not sure I agree, because there's actually, the question is more about what mandate comes with a job title. And I see a lot of mileage in having chief AI officers, same as 5 years ago, they were chief ESG officers or whatever. So people who are driving that agenda. And the reason for that is you put attention, there's a mandate, and there's a cross-functional unit that drives that complexity and almost like an overarching one. So
I love it when we get a chance to disagree.
We're allowed to disagree.
I think chief AI officer, if AI is moving quickly, chief AI officer will move as quickly out the door as chief digital officer went out the door. Because, and I absolutely agree, if you want to bring some focus to stuff, I mean, I've got product in my title. I used to be chief product and information officer. That was an overt attempt to get people around me to think about product as a thing inside their organization. It meant I did nothing different with that job title to what I did when I was a CIO. So I can see the benefit of it. But please, if there's one, is there a chief AI officer in the room? I don't know, that's not true. Sorry, did you put your hand up? I am really, really sorry. I'm really sorry for my comment. However, for everyone else in the room who's got CIO or CTO in their title, The only thing I'd ask you is, why are you not that person? Why have you not put your arms around this if it is so important? Don't let your organization rush to hire a chief AI officer. Go and be that change.
It depends on organization. I think it's not kind of one size fits all.
Can I flip that question on its head though? Because when you look at chief information officers, I think it was Daljit Rahal from HR, so he was talking about the death of the CIO, and that's been a topic of conversation for probably 10 years in many ways. Like, where does this all go? Like, is that down to this democratization? Is this down to some kind of imposter syndrome? A lot of CIOs are kind of eyeing up future roles as chief operating officers or even chief execs potentially down the line. So you could say that risk is irrelevant to this
group. It goes right back to that mandate thing. If you're looking for a role and you're worried about what the actual job title is, don't be. Worry about what levers you've got to pull in the organisation. Where you are in relation to the rest of the exec, because otherwise, what's the point of you, really? You are there to create that change. You're a figurehead for that. So it doesn't matter what your job title is.
But it's also, it signals something towards the organization. So E.ON, 70,000 employees, 70 billion turnover organization, rebranded the CIO into CDTO, Chief Digital Technology Officer. So you signal it towards the organization as well as outside. I myself am guilty of rebranding a software development team into digital solutions. And the first few months, people were AKA and rolling eyes. But once it's sunk, and you just stick with it, and go through the rolling eyes saying, hallelujah.
When I joined my last organisation as CDIO, the marketing director went straight to the CEO and said, I need to be the CMO now.
And we spoke before, and it was like, well, in one organisation they said, well, we were going to call you CIO, but then we'd have to have the chief people officer and the chief finance officer and the finance director. It's like, well, I don't care.
I want to move on. Tammy, I think you had a question.
So I know we're not allowed comments, but just for a quick comment. So I have left a job based on my title changing. So I'm a CISO, and I did not want to become a BISO. So many different types of CISOs out there, technical CISOs, and GRC CISOs, and for me a BISO is definitely a GRC. So that would hurt my personal brand, not that I care that much about it. But I do think actually having a C in your title, having a seat in the boardroom, and being able to put forward your case, do you not think that adds value? So, in a boardroom, people do respect that. Do you not think that would change my role?
I've got a C in my title and I'm not on the board.
Yeah.
Do you not report directly to the board?
No.
You don't?
No. So this is the kind of thing, right?
I think that's the challenge then, is actually having the right title, but also being able to present directly to the board matters.
So I think you're presenting and showing up in front of the board is really, really important. But like Karl, I've had a C in my title, and I've worked for the CEO and not been on the board, and I've worked for CEOs and been on the board. I had the most fun when I worked for the CEO and I wasn't on the board. And the reason was that I was abstracted away from a lot of nonsense. And I talked to a lot of CIOs who go, I want to be on the board, I want to be on the board. Do you know what happens at a board meeting? I got more done. Now, I know it doesn't fix. Yeah? Yeah.
So that's a bit different.
Yeah, accept that.
But I had two roles on a board and two roles reporting to CFO, and I can so Ian, again, different experience, and it shows you we are all kind of very individual, not one size fits all. I had very different conversations. When you are in every executive meeting there is, it is different conversations you're driving. Your team can get from you a sense of purpose and connecting to what the outcomes are from the organization.
I do want to, in the interest of time, one final question, and then I will close it off. Yeah.
So it's more of a clarification for me. I'm a career CIO, not a CISO. And I've reported into chief executive officers usually, also into the boards, and sometimes not. So I appreciate your comment about having the most fun when you're not reporting into the board, because as you said, good Lord, the people that want to be on boards, they clearly don't know what goes on in the board. in boards as a general rule, but I find it's more effective if you are reporting into a board, and even more so if you're part of the executive team, because there's two types of boards. There's the executive board, and then there's the main board. Without not necessarily a seat at the table at a main board, but you have to have that, I guess, committee access to be the most effective that you can be. Otherwise, a great deal of it is out of your control.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you at all. But my point is, there are people who look at where they are and they say, "I need to be on the board to be effective." There are people who are not on the board who are effective, and the question is that you have to adjust your network. You have to behave differently in that environment to get a comparable level of effectiveness. Now, yeah, it's great if you are in those meetings all the time. It's amazing. And I got lots of stuff done in those meetings. But I adjusted my behavior. And I think this is the thing. We'll go right back to the beginning where we talked about situation and awareness. You have to understand your circumstances, understand your environment. Don't necessarily wish for the thing you want to be, but make the thing you are effective. And yes, I had to wear out more shoe leather. I had to do a bit more politics. I had to go and have different kind of meetings. But I actually enjoyed that. I must be a bit of a masochist. I've quite enjoyed that.
But Ian, there's part of it is who you are. The other part is what the organization is. If the organization sees the potential of technology to change the business as low, then it's sometimes also a perception thing. And then the question is, am I in an educational business to explain to the board and to kind of earn that seat at the table, or is the organization just in a very different mindset and it's time to move on? And
I need to close it off. But very quickly, I'll come. Exactly, we've got another half an hour. I want to come to each of you for very quick tips in terms of this room, skill sets, how to keep developing, keep it short and sharp. Before I do that, the one topic we haven't discussed, which I'm opening a can of worms about 3 minutes before we close, shadow IT, cross-functional teams. Ian, you've got some quite robust views on that. So just briefly, can you counter that?
You keep coming to me with robust ideas. Shadow IT was a thing. It's interesting. It's gone. You need to have created, someone mentioned guide rails, whatever here. Mm-hmm. If you haven't worked out that your best advocates and your best R&D team are your colleagues in your business, and you are just, trying to control everything. Ilona said that was yesterday's technology. Now you've got to embrace how diverse this can be. And your job is to create the guide rails and the structures to allow them to be successful. They're going to buy it on their credit card. They're going to use ChatGPT they're going to have subscriptions. Educate and help them do it wisely.
Fantastic. Karl, your kind of tips to the audience in terms of skills, developing yourself as a leader?
So for me, it's coming to events like this, networking, hearing other stories, learning what other organizations are doing. Figuring out what that means for you and your organisation and your own development, and just keep doing that sort of stuff.
Alex?
Tips for people coming into it. Look at the diversity of people who are in this room and beyond. There's such a breadth of kind of jobs that you can do in this world. So there's something here for everyone.
Fantastic. Ian?
It's cool to be a geek.
Ilona?
Self-advocacy. Walk away from this session, think, who are the 3 people you want to know about? What great job your teams are doing? Because we all stand for broader parts of organization. So keep doing the quality, but add that self-advocacy acceptance.
Well, we could have gone on for another half an hour. Thanks all for joining me on stage today. Everyone, please, big round of applause for the panel.